So I'm going to go over my portfolio. So I will start with the data, the website that I got from, and then how I pulled it to Google Sheets, and then I'll go over the actual website itself. So I chose this website, Hockey Reference, because it has a lot of data to work with, and I really like that. Um, and so then I pulled it into Google Sheets, but there's a couple of things that weren't going to chart well. Specifically, this first column has no value, just because rank number one does not mean like that's the best player. It just means that's the row number. That's it. And then these headers were not allowing for each of these columns to have the appropriate headers or like data, I guess. It was not pulling correctly. Um, and then same thing with team totals. So then I did have to clean it up over here. It's a lot better. So this is actually the data that I'm using to pull into here. So I will actually start to the bottom, and then I'll actually get to like the charts and the tables and whatnot. So this header went through a lot of phases, and I'm very proud of it. Um, just because at first it was this big S logo at first, and then I had to scale it down. And then I had the header, but the color picker or color scale was attached to the text, not the background. And I wanted it attached to the background. So I was able to do that, but then I still had this big like logo at the top, and it wasn't pretty, and I didn't like that. So I tried to figure out how can we actually put this into um, all in the same spot. Um, so at first, when I connected the background color, I thought it was just called background. Turns out it's background color. Makes sense. And then you can see it's connected to the color scale. And then the image is in here and adjusted so it fits right next to the title or header. Um, and the color scale does in fact work, and the color scale is connected to all the headers on this website because I thought that would just be so fun. So I'll leave it right there. And then I just wrote a blurb of what the hockey stats is from. It's from the 2025-2026 season. And then while I know what all these columns mean, I don't expect anyone to know and or look it up. So I did create a key. This also went through phases. So I initially used a table, but then the table was really long because this list is very long. And I didn't really like that it took so much space. And so then I tried to figure out a way to have a table and a scrollable function. I wasn't able to figure that out. And I actually just did a list with a scrollable function, which it works. Um, yeah, and this is all the coding. I looked through like the observable pages to find scrollable functions. So that took a little bit. So this is a scrollable container. Okay. Then we finally have the actual data. As you can see, it's connected to the Google Sheets. And then I ran into a couple of challenges. So this initial version looks pretty good, but as you can see, the time is not being read well because of the colon, which makes sense. So then I did have to search how to convert the time into something that's more easily readable, which is just minutes. And then that looked a lot better. So now it's an actual number. Not perfect, but it's a lot better than where we started. The other thing that popped up was that all these number columns were actually being read as strings, which impacted the chart. So it did have to be cleaned up, and I had to look that up as well because I wasn't sure how to change. I thought I could just toggle this, but it didn't give me the option at all to change it to number. It just said string. So I did have to look it up. And then this is what's converted to SQL. And I did descending of shots on goal and points to see if there's correlation. And then this is where I started kind of playing with the chart. So I'll go with like the easiest one. So of course you can see a correlation of, scores on goals. So that means like they actually scored or tried to score. Like it's like near miss essentially in a way. And then actual points that the team received. So there's this, the more you shoot or try to shoot, of course, the more likely you're going to have a point. So again, makes sense. It makes sense. And then I thought, does age matter? There's no correlation, but this also makes sense because they don't all have the same position. So they're not all scoring. I thought maybe, you know, the more time you have in the sport, the wiser you are and better at your skills. I don't know. But then I forgot about the positions. So this also makes a lot of sense. And then the one thing that is still a work in progress, I think. So time. This is time on ice versus average time on ice. Average time on ice is not looking great, but time on ice definitely is reading a lot better. Um, so there's that. Um, and then we have the weather section. Um, so as you can see, the headers are all connected to this color skill from above. So when I was looking at data, here it is. So I realized that really the data that I should be working with is all of this. So from three and on. And so I just used our good old buddy Slice. um, and then I did chart it actually immediately after that, completely forgetting that I have Tuesday night, Wednesday night. So as you can imagine, it was very crowded down here and not pretty. So I did have to find a way to filter it, and that made everything a lot more cleaner. The one thing that I did notice is that while overnight is what computationally correct, like in the correct order, that's not how we read the days. So I think that's still a challenge that is unresolved, but a lot better than when we started. And then I realized I am scrolling so much, so I should put something to make my life easier. So we have this inline block, um, and I did have to kind of figure out how to make it have the function that where you click on it, it takes you to the top. And there's actually a little blank space here on purpose because this is the anchor, or what I'm calling the anchor. So this is all connected, and I think I have several buttons, or maybe a few buttons that do that. But yeah, I noticed there's a lot of scrolling, and I don't want to scroll a lot. And then we have resume, and then this is the top header for it. I did play with the idea of collapsible sections, but I didn't like the fact that this font is so small. So I just opted for the contact section to be collapsible, and then I hyperlinked my LinkedIn. And then we have all of this, and then I did put in this table. So when I first tried to put so this table type is the same table type that I tried to put in here as a scrollable feature, but it did not work. So I opted to use it down here for the skill section instead. So that's where its home is at. And then I also added downloadable version. So it actually takes you to my PDF of my resume, and then let's let it load. Oh, okay. And then I added another button so you can go to the top. And I don't know if you noticed, but I did preset the color so it matches the color of the logo when you first load the website. As you can tell, I'm very proud of this header. But that is my portfolio.